The tingling started at her toes and spread throughout her body. Her mind was racing, and her heart was thumping so loud she was sure everyone in the house could hear it. Eve dropped the packet and pictures back onto the table, got up abruptly, and moved to the counter to make herself a cup of Death Wish coffee. The high caffeine content and the fact that it was made in upstate New York were just two of the reasons this brand was her favorite. Unlike her go-to, Starbucks, it was smooth and easy to drink. She was thankful those dreaded 9 months of pregnancy were over. Eve paused, one elbow on the counter, eyes wide. She stared at the items on the table while listening to the water from Keurig's reservoir gurgle down into the machine and eventually make its way through the coffee grounds and into her cup. Eve returned to the chair, took a deep swallow, enjoying the coffee's cherry and chocolate notes, and sat back down. A smile cracked her face. Oh boy, did she have a good feeling about this day. Eve picked up the photos, one at a time. The images were clear, very professional, definitely not a product of CCTV. God knows she's seen her share of the grainy quality CCTV snaps. Why, in this day and age, can they not improve the quality? She knew the answer. CCTV captures everyone in the frame equally, whereas a camera has a focus. Unlike Eve at the moment. When did she become so easily distracted? This would have never happened when she was working in the field. In one shot, she could make out her own face under a black curly wig on the street outside the hotel. In another, she was easily recognizable, holding the gun used to shoot 2 security officers. A third photo was a picture of Eve with the backpack containing the bomb that would cause the destruction of an insurance company on Wall Street. But then there were more, all showing Eve on that eventful day 3 years earlier. It seemed like a lifetime ago. At the time of the bombing, Eve had been an active FBI agent, fresh off an undercover assignment. Still, the activities in the photos were not sanctioned by the FBI because, as we all know, the FBI does not sanction killing, ever. The images documented Eve's part in a plot she and her father had carried out in homage to her stepmother and as a warning to insurance agencies. Change your ways or you'll be next. In other words, based on the definition of terrorism, Eve and her father were domestic terrorists. However, this behavior was a one-time thing, not a career path. 3 years ago, Special Agent Evelyn Eve Black was part of the New York FBI field office and worked a particular case going undercover at the International Defense Exhibition Conference, or IDEC. Unbeknownst to her boss, Special Agent in Charge, or SAC, Adam Lange, Eve had another motive. She needed to find a terrorist cell to blame for the planned bombing. The insurance company canceled Camilla's coverage when she was diagnosed with diabetes mellitus type 2. Insulin costs were so high that she was forced to parcel out what little medicine she could afford. After a few weeks of inadequate self-regulation, she fell into a diabetic coma and never recovered. John, Eve's father, was oblivious to Camilla's plight, and her death shocked him. There were several reasons he could blame himself, such as never bothering to get a real job with better insurance. Instead, he had relied on his online hacking business to provide for his family. In John's eyes, the fault was not his. He blamed a flawed government, one that did not care about the poor and disenfranchised. The government gave too much power to insurance companies, and the American people suffered. Eve's childhood had been unique. Her father, Leonard Wilkins, a.k.a. John Black, was a member of the socialist college group turned terrorist organization, the Weathermen. When the Weathermen was deemed a terrorist group, her father, mother, and young Eve went underground to prevent the FBI from finding and arresting Leonard as one of the outspoken leaders of the faction. Eve spent her first years continually on the move with her parents, rarely spending more than a night or two in any one location. The nomadic lifestyle was too much for Eve's mother. She was unable to cope, so she left her small family and moved back to Michigan with her parents. John survived his wife's departure thanks to the support of his Weatherman friends. When Eve was 5 years old, John and several of his socialist comrades caravanned to New Mexico, 30 miles north of Taos, and started a commune. The population grew over time, and the community evolved into the village of Tres Piedras, New Mexico. The community continued to foster an atmosphere of anti-government intellectuals and became a home for anyone with similar beliefs. Because of his role with the Weatherman, John was the unofficial leader of the leaderless settlement. Even some 30 years later, the flock looked to him for guidance and advice. When Eve's mother left her husband and small daughter, John was crushed. He spiraled into depression. Drinking heavily and isolating himself, he left raising his daughter to the community. Several years later, when Eve was a spunky, adventurous, and somewhat ill-mannered 10-year-old, Camilla visited the compound. She met and fell in love with both John and his young daughter, and never left. Camilla changed their lives. John put aside his drinking and rejoined the small society, and little Eve had a mother again. Camilla brought love and structure to her new family and the group. Life in the desert was isolated and quiet. As a community, the residents chose not to be distracted by television, the government's tool to spread its message to the masses. Instead, they listened to music, read books, and had lengthy socialist-leaning discussions, and invited the few children to engage. Eve's father was the exception. There was an old military bunker on the land, one of the primary reasons in which they squatted there so many years ago. Inside that bunker he had a shortwave radio, the only way he had at the time to relay telephone and telegraph communications over great distances. The obsession to be connected evolved from shortwaves into Wi-Fi. Computers occupied much of her father's time in her early years. Eve had very few friends and spent much of her time alone. Keenly observant and aware of her and the community's uniqueness, she watched and listened to people in the stores and on the streets during supply runs in the nearby town. Eve learned to imitate the behavior of others very well, reading their body language, observing both verbal and nonverbal methods of communication, and mimicking their mannerisms. This was a skill she perfected over the years. When Eve left her home in New Mexico for Columbia University in New York, her childhood upbringing in the small desert community made her an ill fit among her wealthy, highly socialized classmates. Social interaction was not the only thing that left her feeling like an outcast. Everything made her feel this way, right down to the television shows and movies her contemporaries often referenced. The first semester at the university was difficult. Still, she could blend in using the talent that she had been honing since age 12.